now. But seeing as though we have two presenters, I'm going to get started and I'm going to introduce Sanjana. So Sanjana is actually here at Rutgers with us, so I have the pleasure of introducing her. Sanjana Gandikota. She has her bachelor's degree in cellular biology and neuroscience and is now pursuing her master's degree in global public health at the Rutgers School of Public Health. And she's working with the RICC team on her capstone project. So with that, Sanjana, if you would like to share your slides.
Thank you
Perfect.
so much for the introduction. Can everyone see the slides?
We can see and hear.
Awesome. Okay. Hi, everyone. This slideshow is about the results of the RePORT International Survey on Artificial Intelligence. Are we ready for the future? So to start off, I just wanted to give a quick profile of the survey respondents' profile. The methods of collection that we did for the survey was that it was an online survey via Qualtrics, and we did this between the 2 weeks of June 2025. We sent it out to 501 RePORT international members, and we covered topics about artificial intelligence use and attitudes about it in our field. And we received 65 anonymous responses, and the questions were not mandatory. Also note that the respondents were allowed to pick multiple choices or multiple options within a question, so we had multiple responses for those as well. In terms of the professional roles of our participants, we got that majority of our participants were investigators, seconding to research coordinators and data analysts or statisticians. We also had different individuals in our field, such as postdoctoral scholars and even admin support within our survey. In terms of your experience, we had majority of the participants saying that they were here and part of RICC for the past 15 years or so. And the second to that was around 69 years, but we did have a good flow of individuals from 0 to 5 and even 10 to 15. And in terms of primary research areas, again, we had a huge diversity of population within our participants. We had people from epidemiology, diagnostics, going all the way down to microbiology. And so we discussed a little bit about AI tools and use. So we first started by asking participants about how they were using text generation or question response and also image generation in their research workflow. Of course, on text generation, we see that there's a lot of ChatGPT participant users, which was interesting to see, and of course, Grammarly. And we also had a little population of participants saying others. Of note, majority of the responses and others were saying Microsoft Copilot. We did not include that in our question when we asked about text generation, but a lot of the free responses were saying that we use Microsoft Copilot. And going into image generation, a lot of participants said they were not using any image generation, and the little lateral were using Canva and Microsoft Copilot for image generation. And so how are researchers using the AI text tools? According to the participants, they were using it for manuscript and grant writing in terms of improving grammar, communication, and just overall creating clarity on how they were producing their material and how they were communicating their material. We did have a lot of data analysts and statisticians also in our survey who did say that they were using it for writing and debugging code or going through technical troubleshooting. But majority of the participants were saying that we were using it to just communicate our ideas better or just in terms of communication of note. And how they were using AI image tools was kind of limited for core scientific visuals. So using it for image generation for their newsletters, pamphlets, or just sharing material about their projects. And again, this kind of goes off of our text generation tools and how they were using it for just communication purposes. And before I go into how we asked about chatbot to our participants, just to introduce it quickly, I'm sure we've seen chatbots everywhere in terms of virtual care, making a health appointment, and now it's even in our iPhones or even our Google phones with Meta AI, and of course, ChatGPT and DeepSeek are the most recent chatbots that we're seeing. And so how are researchers using chatbots? Is again, majority of them reported saying that they were using ChatGPT for their chatbots use, and the second was no use. It was interesting to see DeepSeek on these surveys because DeepSeek is a later technology or the most latest technology. So it's interesting to see that at least 5 of our respondents were using these for chatbots. And again, very similar to text generation, they were using it for writing, editing, communication, and again, coding support. Some of them reported that they were using it for literature review and finding relevant literature quickly and narrowing down their topics. Later on, we talked about artificial intelligence and machine learning and how participants were using it for TB research. Before I jump into the nitty-gritties of what the survey responses were, just wanted to quickly go over the AI versus ML versus LLM because we kind of use it all the same. So AI was the umbrella term that we were talking about, and then we went into machine learning. Again, this is what our data analysts were using majority of the time for regressions, linear regressions, etc. So analyzing patterns in data. And then deep learning was not mentioned in our survey, but this is just part of the model that we wanted to show on the right here. And finally, large language models, as the word says, we were using large data sets in order to find a pattern and then train them to do their own thing. So similar to ChatGPT, DeepSeek, they use LLMs. And so what tools were researchers using in terms of machine learning in our TB researchers? Majority of them, around 26 researchers, reported that they were not using any ML support. We did have 27 researchers saying that they did use ML in their research. And on the left, you can see in our visual that majority of them, again, were using it for logistic regression, random forest, and decision classification trees, again, for the data analysis aspect of our projects. And then we did want to know how our participants were even viewing the idea of AI ML in our field in terms of how much impact it has had in our TB research. Majority of them reported saying we had a moderate impact. They were happy with it, but we're still cautious about where we're going with this topic. And then we did have a couple saying no impact or transformative. There were very few that said transformative, so we're still indicating some form of optimism, including highlighting room for growth and skepticism. And we wanted to record the overall respondents' thoughts on this idea. So they did voice a decent amount of concerns about AI ML in global TB research. Some of them obviously talked about ethics and integrity in terms of academic dishonesty and plagiarism, and also losing a lot of our originality, saying that originality is dying, limited thinking will limit innovation. The second to that was data issues in terms of privacy risks and even misuse of the data that we are including into these chatbots or AI or training them. Finally, we did have some participants saying that we don't know enough information about AI ML. We're not trained or skilled enough to even validate these. So there is a technical barrier in terms of how we can validate what we're trying to get a result of. We had another survey participants say that none of us would accept a p-value of 0.2, but that is how the standard for most AI outputs are for clinical guidance. But to finally wrap it up, looking ahead on how we can embrace AI in TB research, we had some fear response surveyors say that AI does make us lazy, but at the same time, I'm still the real brain behind every action. So it does help us make our work faster and more efficient, especially with limited staff or resources, so we can try to see how we can optimize this. And many surveyors were opting to open to learning on how to use AI, ML, or LLMs to save time and be more efficient. So to finally wrap this up, the bottom line for us was that balance is key. AI supports ideas, but the people lead the work. Thank you so much. Any questions?
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Sanjana.
Of course.
Does anyone have any questions on the results of the survey? No? Okay. All right, Rajita, I'm going to hand the microphone over to you for an introduction.
Sure. Thank you, Sanjana, for that great introduction. And I think what you've presented, I think, will really inform sort of the future of RICC and RePORT International and the type of training that we might be doing down the road, support and tools. So it leads really well into the presentation that's going to be done by Mariana next in terms of what she's been doing on the ground with the use of AI. So it's my great pleasure to introduce Dr. Mariana Pereira, who will present her outstanding work on science education and communication today. Dr. Pereira is a scientist at the Monster Institute, where she holds multiple leadership roles. She serves as the program manager of the RePORT Brazil Consortium and leads the Sybil Lab as a group leader. At the Monster Institute, she also oversees the immunology and precision medicine departments. Dr. Pereira is an accomplished researcher, having published multiple and numerous high-impact studies in prestigious journals, and she mentors several undergraduate and graduate students with great dedication. Her work has attracted funding from many organizations such as NIH, CRDF Global, and the Brazilian Ministry of Health, which reflects the excellence and the relevance of her research. Beyond her scientific achievements, Dr. Pereira has devoted remarkable energy to advancing science literacy, education, and communication. Under her leadership, the team has developed books, applications, educational tools, and events that bring science to schools, clinics, and the broader community, covering topics ranging from vaccines to autism and beyond. So we were very proud and grateful to have Dr. Pereira as part of the consortium as a whole. And these are words actually expressed by Dr. Bruno Andrade, who's the head of the consortium in Brazil. And he has expressed that he's also very excited to have her share the details of the work that she's done, which is actually very inspiring and very impactful. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Mariana Pereira.
Thank you, Rajita. Thank you so much. Can you see my screen? Oh my God.
Please.
I'm sorry. Just a second. Because I'm using two screens. So, okay. Yep,
Now it's okay?
We see your presentation, and it is perfect in display slide mode. Perfect.
Okay, so thank you so much. Thank you, Rajita. Thank you all for the opportunity and for being here today. As Rajita said, I'm a PhD trained bioinformatician specialized in systems immunology and precision medicine. But I also study educational tools for teaching science for children. So it's a big pleasure talk about science communication here and unify these two fields. So today we will talk about how to make scientific publications more accessible using artificial intelligence. And I also will talk about the Maria Ciência project, that is our project in Brazil. I'd like to start this conversation with a simple phrase, a simple question that is science reaching society? Some people discover science early by doing a homemade volcano, a glowing star map, some little experiments with parents and also with teachers. For example, in this picture, we have my godson with his homemade volcano. But unfortunately, for many people, this moment never comes. And this is a big problem because probably the first contact with science guided us to be here today. So if part of the society doesn't have this access to science or cannot understand it, maybe we are losing some potential scientists. And because of this, we need to talk more and think more about how science often moves fast, but it moves alone. We do a lot of science at the universities, in the academic circles, but we don't communicate effectively the science for society. And there are some reasons to this happen, but some of them are because our content, the scientific articles, are often behind paywalls, written in inaccessible language, and disconnected from real-world needs. We know there are some fields that are very hard to communicate, but we need to try it. Because don't communicate our results to society creates a knowledge inequality. Those people who needs information are the most often can't access or comprehend it. And this creates an science accessibility gap. But why science accessibility matters? So during some periods like the pandemic, like the COVID-19 pandemic, for example, we need to communicate science quickly, and the society needs to understand it to follow the recommendations. Mainly today, this is very important because there is a lot of misinformations, and misinformation spreads faster than evidence. So we need to improve, we need to increase our efforts to disseminate science and disseminated evidence-based informations. But mainly, we also need to improve the scientific literacy of the society, because a population unable to evaluate scientific claims is vulnerable. If my society cannot understand what is science, if the information is true or false, this is a big problem, and is not only an educational problem, it's also a public health issue. So scientific literacy is very important to solve some public health problems today. In the society, we have different levels of scientific literacy. So, for example, we have the nominal level, where the individuals can recognize some terms, but doesn't have a clear understanding of the meaning. We have also the functional level, where the individual can use some scientific and technological words, but only at school, only in academic contexts. We also have the structural level. So the individual demonstrates understanding and the relationship between concepts. And finally, we have the multidimensional level, where the individual understand, develop, and also think about the importance of science on the society. And for example, in the global ranking of scientific literacy, US have a good position. So most of population have a functional or higher level of scientific literacy, but this is not true for most part of the world. In Brazil, for example, a half of our population only have nominal scientific literacy level. And because of this, we had a lot of problems during the pandemic. And this is true also for a big part of the global south. So if you want to solve some problems, some public health problems in the world, we need to invest on science literacy. But even in US, we have some questions that we need to address to improve the scientific literacy in the population. Some studies shows that, for example, white people and men have a higher score than other races or women. And this is associated with education access, socio-economical aspects, and also the investment and the stimuli for do some scientific experiments and have scientific literacy. So even in US, if we want to have a society with a higher educational level, we need to invest on this and increase our scientific dissemination. And when we talk about the content of science communication, we need to think about 3 aspects. My content must have clear concepts, clear scientific concepts. So I need to simplify some terms, some technical words. I also need to be careful and provide evidence-based informations because I'm responsible for this dissemination of information. And finally, we need to think about how can we change the content to adapt for different groups. I cannot use the same content for children and for policymakers, for example. So the science communication content must be adapted for each target population. Okay. Today, we have some traditional strategies like lay summaries, infographics, webinars, and some open access journals, but these strategies are time consuming, are not scalable, sometimes depends on the population to active search for this content, and this is not effective. So one possibility is to use artificial intelligence to help us bridge this gap. And why we should consider use AI in science communication. So AI offers scalable tools to assist in simplifying, adapting, and sharing scientific knowledge. ChatGPT, for example, represents a practical, already available solution to support researchers and also communicators. But for truly bridge this gap, we must integrate artificial intelligence with ethical, critical, and educational perspectives in science communication. We cannot only use AI and transfer the responsibility to AI to do this science communication. So here we are talking about AI as a co-creator and not a replacement in science communication. And now I'd like to present you Maria Ciência. It's our project using GPT, ChatGPT, and the aim is to connect science, society, and public health with the goal of translating scientific knowledge for different groups, promoting access to information, critical thinking, and also the ability to judge informations and have more informed decision making. So this is a specialized GPT-based assistant for science communication. And we've chose the OpenAI platform because it's easy. This is the first thing, but also allows us to be made available the tool for free to users. So even if you are using the free version of ChatGPT, you can use the Maria Ciência tool easily. In this platform, we also can perform a contextual and continuous training, doing specific instructions on language, tone, desired formats. And we also can use some reference materials about non-stigmatizing language, science education, and communication. In our case, we also perform a continuous refinement with supervised learning based on interactions, corrections, and feedbacks. And after create the tool, we also tested this by different audiences and used the comments and the evaluations to improve the tool. Here are some reference materials we've used to create Maria Ciência. So the first one is a material provided by the Brazilian Ministry of Health about simple language and non-stigmatizing language in Brazil. We also used some guidelines from journals associated with science communications. So, for example, we used some guidelines from Profissão Biotech, that is a journal of science communication in biotechnology in Brazil. And we also used some guidelines from Frontiers for Young Minds, that it's a journal focused on children and adolescents by Frontiers. And thinking more about public health, we also included some terminology guidelines. So the UNITE's terminology guidelines, UNICEF guidelines, and also a global tuberculosis dictionary, because it's our main field. And we also included some materials about education and how to improve literacy in general in this platform to create Maria Ciência. For each target population, Maria Ciência changed the content. So, for example, for children, the tool creates a playful and narrative-driven writing. For general population, simplifies the concept and also gives some health informations. For managers, policymakers, Maria Ciência creates some summaries with suggested policy improvements according to the results of the research. And for social media, Maria Ciência simplifies the content and use visual storytelling and structured messages to inform in this virtual context. So this is our tool. So if you put your paper in PDF format, for example, you can ask for explain this article for children, summarize for general public, simplify for health students, or ask about some policies that may be created or improved using the results. When you start to use Maria Ciência, there are three primary steps we need to follow to have the content. So Maria Ciência needs to understand your aim, what is your population, what is your objective. After, Maria Ciência will ask you about some improvements in the content. As I said, Maria Ciência is a co-creator, it's not the main author. So you are the author, Maria Ciência, it's just in helping you to translate this. And finally, the tool will provide a final content aligned with your aims and profile. So to create this tool, we selected some reference materials, created the first prompt saying that we'd like to translate papers in simple contents. And after we performed some internal tests and also studied more about DGPT and also educational practices, and configured this tool thinking about this. And thus, we generated 200 texts and put these texts in a survey to different people evaluate this randomly. And after we evaluated this data. So the first version of Maria Ciência was evaluated by more than 100 people 123 evaluators. Most of them have studied or health professionals, but also some article authors, general population, and few communication professionals and health managers. But the communication professionals and health managers only evaluated specific content, where general population, article authors, and health students evaluated all types of content. And during this evaluation, each participant was asked to access outputs according to some criteria. So for each text, the criteria were, for example, is this clear and appropriate? Does this text provide sufficient information? Is the language appropriate for the literacy level? And finally, does this text maintain scientific accuracy and communicate it in an effective way? And this was performed using a scale from 1 to 5 for each criteria. This is a figure we've put it in the manuscript, where we can see the mean score for each criteria and each content. Each color represents one group, and the size of circle represents the sample size. And here we can see that the content for children and for general population had the highest scores for all parameters if compared to the content for health managers or social media. The content for health managers and social media was not bad, but we need to pay attention here and revise it with more details to don't have misinformation and also direct correctly the information in the text. And here we also can see that the article authors are more critical than the other groups in the population. So the authors gave the lower scores. And this is very important because the authors knows in details about the research. But this is very interesting. See that, for example, for the general population, the text is amazing, and the author said, okay, but you forgot this. So we tried also solve these problems and adjust this during the Maria Ciência development. And for example, to simplify these results, Maria Ciência created one figure, that is this figure, showing the overall score for each content. And here we can see more clearly that the content for children have the highest score, and the content for health managers have the lowest score. And this was created using the Maria Ciência with a simple prompt only asking if the tool could simplify this figure. So Maria Ciência created this. Other analysis we did was comparing Maria Ciência with the GPT base about context and also the ability to continuity during the conversation. Also the number of interruptions, because if you use GPT or other platforms, you know that during some content creation, sometimes we have some interruptions. So we quantified this also. And finally, we evaluated the ability to return to context after interruption, comparing our specialized tool with the GPT base. Here we can see that For general public, for health managers, and for social media, the scores are very similar between Maria Ciência and GPT, but for children, Maria Ciência shows a higher performance if compared to GPT. And I also asked Maria Ciência to simplify it, and the tool created this figure showing that for children, Maria Ciência is the number one if compared to GPT. And here we have the numbers. So in the global score for children content had a higher difference between Maria Ciência and GPT, with 4.7 for Maria Ciência and 3.6 to GPT. Here are some examples. So for example, using this recent paper about genomics of schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, and depression, we asked Maria Ciência to create a history for children, and it created the history entitled The Brain Detectives and the Mystery of the Mind. That is based on the article and explains using simple words what is schizophrenia, what is bipolar disorder, depression, and how genomics can help us to understand this. And also Maria Ciência creates some illustrations to improve the ability to communicate the science using this text. Now, using the last paper from RePORT Brazil by Isabella about the effects of missed anti-TB therapy doses on treatment outcomes, we asked Maria Ciência to create different contents. And for example, we have here a history of Tommy, a brave little boy who learns that even if he feels better, he must keep taking the medicines. And we have these illustrations. Also, we asked about a content for general public. And here we can see, for example, that Maria Ciência chants all the informations, thinking about how can I access this specific group. So now it uses a lot of bullet points to explain the results, what people can do using these results as references, and also why it matters. And this is important because we can simplify our results and try to educate people about this. For policymakers, Maria Ciência provides the author's name, the journal's name, the identification, creates a summary about the relevance of the research, and suggest some recommendations for policy development or improvement according to the results. So here, for example, it talks about improve the monitoring of DOT, expand some supports about socioeconomic aspects, invest in different models to improve this treatment, and promote health literacy and also improve the health systems. Finally, Maria Ciência created a content for social media, specifically for Instagram here. So we have the caption with some bullet points, but now with some icons and hashtags to help us to disseminate this information. And also Maria Ciência can create the figures that we will use in the social media to disseminate these finds. And put here the source, for example, with the name of the author and the journal. So I'd like to highlight some aspects. So science belongs to everyone, but only when it is understandable, usable, and shared beyond academic walls. We need to communicate more science. AI can help us and translate our knowledge into different formats and for different groups, but it's still our responsibility to set the rules. It's not just use the AI. And the most important outcomes occurs from collaboration between machines and humans. So not only machines, not only humans, but we need to work together to do this. Here are some materials developed with assistance from Maria Ciência. So we have some puzzles about nutritional aspects, treatments, autism, and Brazilian science. These puzzles were distributed in different institutions and schools and clinical settings. We also have the Instagram page where we disseminate science in Portuguese for the Brazilian population. And we also are creating some books. So we have this book, for example, about tuberculosis for children. And in the next month, this will be available in the clinical sites from RePORT Brazil. And we are also developing other books with other health topics, like vaccines, autism, nutritional aspects, for example. And here we have some pictures from our events associated with some other different works. So for example, here is, in the first one, is an event on an institution specialized in autism, for example. But we also had other activities on social and for population with some social vulnerabilities. And now we are expanding our events to other children, for example, at schools and other institutions. Here is our preprint talking more about our experience and how we developed this tool. And I'd like to thank a lot the CBO group, the Monster Institute, and also the RePORT Brazil for also all support and for everything. So here we also have the QR code to access the Maria Ciência tool. And I'd like to remember that you don't really understand something unless you can explain it to your grandma. And thank you so much.
Thank you so much for that. That was amazing. All right, I'd like to open up the floor to any questions. You have a lot of applause coming through and hearts.
Hi.
David, hi.
Oh, thank you for a very nice set of presentations. I had I'll limit it to one question. So a recent report from the Department of Health and Human Services called Make America Healthy Again. The report came out and many AI experts, as well as some newspapers like the Washington Post, found a lot of discrepancies. There were authors that were made up. There were citations that were wrong, and so forth. And they all believed that the policy statement was made using AI. So there have been some follow-up discussions that some journals and that might ask authors to declare if any of their manuscript was generated by AI, just as you would in a presentation where you have to declare conflict of interest, that you are sponsored by a pharmaceutical company or some other. Do you see any instance of that happening either in Sanjana or Mariana? Something like that coming out, that some sort of affirmation that that you had generated some of the material using artificial intelligence?
Thank you, Dr. David. So during the development, we had some problems with this, with the AI putting some informations that were not in the paper, creating some informations, but now the AI only uses the uploaded material, or at least it's what we put it in the configuration, and right now we are having a better accuracy than before to do this, because before, for example, we've put a paper about anti-TB treatment in Brazil, but the AI was including information from other countries, or creating some informations that were wrong, and we needed to supervise this learning and refine the material to have this better content today. And yeah, I believe the first we tried to solve this, but we still need to revise about the misinformations in the content to remove this problem of the AI creates new contents and puts new information in the paper. And it was this, and also about the conflict of interest. In this case, I don't know, because I'm trying to think about some content that we had this problem, but I cannot remember right now, between, for example, industry or something like this, because our papers that we've used to test the tool didn't have this aspect. But we need to think also about this, and especially when we talk about some medicine or some industry. And thank you so much for talk about this.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, David. Brigitte, I see you put a question in the chat. Would you like me to read that? Okay. How can AI be used in our research, such as patient recruitment, dissemination of results to the public / media? So that's a broad question. Mariana?
Here in Brazil, we've developed the book about TB, and we will put this book in the clinical sites for all people, not only those enrolled at RePORT Brazil. And we created this book thinking about children, but a lot of adults loved it. So it's a material that I believe will help us to inform and enhance our participants about TB and other health aspects. So I believe we can use this to explain better about tuberculosis during the patient recruitment. And also after each manuscript, for example, I believe we can use AI to translate it for different publics, not only for our patients, but also for the community, the society, and also policymakers. And here in Brazil, we are testing it, and until now we have a good results with this. And we also, it's important information. We are finishing the translation of this book to English, so we can share with you soon. I believe in this month or in the next month, so you all can disseminate it and translate to other languages, for example, if needed for the patient recruitment in other countries.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. David Hom actually put a comment in the chat as well, saying that following Rajita's question, can you use AI to take a protocol and create an informed consent document? Which is a great idea to make things more easily digestible for people to understand. Have you come up against that?
Oh, we in our tool, it's complicated. It's really complicated. Our tool was developed only thinking about the papers. And I believe that at some point we can use AI to try to translate the language of the informed consent document. But I believe that it's complicated because we have several steps that we need to create these documents and have the IRB approvals. So I don't know. I believe that we can start with this science communication and translation of results, but it's possible, but needs more. I don't know how to say this, but I don't know. For example, we need a careful revision of this. We need revise it with a lot of details because it's very sensitive. But yes, it's possible.
Abhay? Abhay Kadam?
Yeah. Thank you, Mariana. It's tremendous work. Actually, I really appreciate for the tremendous efforts you have taken over the years. Okay, just to clarify the informed consent related thing, yeah, the informed consent is not a one-time process. It need to be conducted throughout the study period, and as per our experiences in field, whatever doubts or other things they appear during the study participation period or even after that, that can be effectively addressed through such initiatives, and I think it can be effectively used. My coming to my question, uh, the question is related to trust. The systematic reviews show that people they prefer to browse on social media instead of a standalone app. So to build you mentioned in one slide that despite discontinuation, participants they are returning to the application and browsing the information. But to keep the participant engaged, there are n number of challenges. Specifically, the social media, which many people are relying, and our experiences in COVID, it um, instead of information, the misinformation is the really challenging thing, which is very difficult to handle. So the balancing between what are the reliable sources and what are the misinformation sources, which are pushed through different algorithms. So either any vision or any plans to suppress such algorithms which push misinformation or identify misinformation specifically among the study participant or your study population, any AI algorithms which with consent of participant can be installed on their smartphone, and that will help them to keep them away from such misinformation. Because our experience in India, it shows that people, even they morph WHO logo and or even the national health agency's logo to spread the misinformation. So for layperson, it is very difficult to make the difference between what is reliable and what is from trusted sources. So in terms of that, what are your experiences in engaging participants, specifically balancing these critical things?
Oh, thank you so much. So this is a good point. I believe that to solve this, we need to invest on education and science literacy, because the individual must be able to distinguish between true and false, and also, for example, if I see a information in the WhatsApp, the message app, I must check this and search for the original source of information. But this doesn't occur. So I believe we need to invest on education of the society, scientific literacy, before to only communicate science. We need to prepare the society to deal with misinformation and um, um, identify this and discard this, and search for original sources and for better sources, for example. But yeah, it's a big problem. And there are some AI that are more specialized in social media, but we did not test this to have the metrics about engagement, but we will do this in the next steps. For example, try to identify the contents that have more access, more engagement, and think about, for example, how can we improve this type of content and maybe reduce the misinformations in the social media, but it's very difficult. And
No,
I
I
believe this is not a problem only for health science. It's a problem in general.
no, it's quite resource intensive thing, and that's why I was wondering if AI can be creatively used for such labor intensive work, and then researcher can specifically focus on the other things. Yeah.
Yeah. And about the evaluators, it was a anonymized evaluation. So we don't know about the educational level or more information. So I believe we have a bias here associated with the informations. I'm talking about the evaluators that evaluated the text generated by our tool. And in the next steps, we plan to expand this evaluation and also have more details about the participants to try to identify these aspects that are associated with this bias, and for example, associated with educational level, access to information, science experience, and evaluate this and how they evaluate our materials.
Great. Thank you. We are approaching the end of our call time, but I see we have a hand up. Jonathan?
Hey Mariana, I just wanted to really commend you on this project. You know, it's really obviously we keep coming out with unique ways to use AI, but this is one that's very unique, and what you've done specifically with turning these papers into child-friendly applications is really interesting. And we're working on a project led by Samira Cox and others at Hopkins in India. it's called TFSI, TB Free Schools Initiative, where we're working to to screen many kids for TB infection and provide preventive therapy. And we're developing materials for these kids. And I'd like to talk to you, maybe, I know if we're out of time, but to see if there's ways to work with you to fine tune the tools that we've been developing and make them. Obviously, we're doing it for an India population. And you talked about different languages, but whether or not we could use this for our population would be really interesting. Taking papers from the literature like you've done, but also potentially products that have been developed already and combining them to make something unique for this population. So I really think what you're doing is interesting, and we could hopefully potentially apply it almost immediately.
Oh, thank you so much. This is amazing. I'd like to participate and work with you to develop these materials. We only need to understand the aspects associated with this specific population to adapt the content the material for them, thinking about your aims and also the individual aspects. But this is really amazing.
Yeah, we'll figure out how to
Thank you.
connect offline. Sorry, I know we're over time.
Thank you.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much. I know we are out of time right now. Thank you all. And we will be emailing again about our next presentation for next month, I believe. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.